I'm sure I'm like a lot of people that have been operating with a pretty decent computer for a while, but then when you step up and you're starting to use like a GoPro or any other camera that can handle 4K, put out 4K video, it really starts to tax your machine. Now you might be able to play your raw file and get pretty good frame rates right on your screen. You might even be able to blow it up fully like I'm doing here with my little 15-second sample clip here, and I'm not getting very choppy. It's watchable. But the problem comes when you put it into a program. In this case, I've been using to edit my videos a program called Shotcut, which is an open source free program. It's pretty good. It's not as good as obviously the more professional systems, but it's pretty suitable for most of what I do here. Now you'll see this is the exact same file, and in the editor you start to play it and it gets very choppy. So it's hard to utilize this with all that kind of choppiness, and it gets even worse if you expand the size of this window here. So I looked at getting a different computer, and what I did is I actually took this file, or a file like it, and took it down to the Best Buy store and tried it on the number of machines, and I was a little surprised how well it can do in different machines. So what I ended up, I'll show you what I ended up buying. If you go out on YouTube and you listen to some videos about an upgraded system, there's a lot of gamers out there who swear by building your own. So if you look at the kind of chips that the gamers use and the graphics cards, they're always built around these AMD Ryzen chipsets, which is the 3600 and higher. And if you add up all the parts for the chip, the motherboard, the graphics board, the memory cards, the solid state memory on the board, you'll end up spending close to $1,000. You can probably get by with less than that. Many of them don't come, or you have to, figure out how to get the networking to work. You got to figure out how to get Windows loaded, and there's a chance that you might not be successful when you're building up yourself unless you have some good local help. So there are options to look at some of the bigger suppliers that will custom build one for you. One of them is called CyberPower PC. They actually supply PCs also to Best Buy, and they have some pretty nice systems. You can custom order ones from their website, or you can actually order some that are already built. They take a little while to get there, but again, they're out in California, and even though they're talk about having good support, you got to get in line with some of the other people. So one of the things when you start looking at the details on some of these systems, a lot of them you have to keep adding parts to them. Like they might not come with a Wi-Fi interface. They may just have a hardwired network interface. They may need to have a bigger power supply depending on the graphics processor board you put in there. And when it comes down to it, these gamer systems, even though they'd be great for using for video editing, they're pretty much overkill, because all you really need when you're doing video editing is enough memory. Pretty much a single thread operation, because you're not doing gaming where they're using multiple threads through the processor. You're only usually running that one application, and so you don't necessarily need to have a tremendous amount of memory. And so if you start to think about really what you basically need is to have a fairly solid system that allows you to seamlessly do your editing without having to be bogged down by that chunkiness as you're trying to scroll through the video as you're editing. You can pretty much get by with a less system than what a lot of the gamers consider to be mainstream systems. So I started to look at what I could get locally, and one of the more popular one is the one of the cyber power PCs from that's at Best Buy. It does use the Ryzen 5 3600 chip, and it is a pretty attractive unit. I think the current price is $750. It's considered an entry-level gaming machine, and it does have a lot of the basic features you need. But if you keep digging down, you'll find out that you can even get by with a little less money and get a pretty decent machine. So when I went to Best Buy and tried out my file on a number of different machines, I ended up being attracted to the Hewlett-Packard Ryzen 5 systems that they have. The main one that I was focused on was the Ryzen 5 3400G, which came with 12 gigabytes of RAM. What was nice is it had a built-in DVD writer / CD. Had built-in solid-state memory. It had a media reader on it, which you don't get in the other systems. That would be something you have to add extra. It had 4 USBs on the front, 4 USBs on the back, so you could pretty easily get access to be able to plug in your cameras. It had both Wi-Fi and hardwired Ethernet capability. It even had Bluetooth. Came with dual port video if you wanted to have another monitor. And it had the ability to add a hard disk drive inside if you wanted to. And so what I end up getting is this Fox 0024 unit, which comes with 256 gigabytes of solid state memory. Doesn't come with its own disk drive, but you can add it. And I did do that. I added a 4 terabyte Seagate drive for about $90, which only took me about 10 minutes to install. And so here's what I got for the performance on that one, and I'll compare the results from that to my old machine. So this is the machine I ended up taking home. It was an open box Hewlett-Packard Fox 0024. It's got a Ryzen 5 chip in there, and I'll go through the specs here in a little bit, but I took that same file, and you can see on the player here at full, I'll just go full screen and play it, same file. It plays just fine, nice and smooth on the display itself. Actually a little bit nicer, smoother than it does on my Inspiron machine. And then obviously the final test is to try it in the Shotcut program. So I got that loaded in here, and I'll show you what it does. It's much smoother. It's got a little bit of choppiness in it, but nothing like it had on the other machine. But this is much more acceptable of what I would need to actually do the video editing on a new machine. So let's talk about the specs for a little bit. Alright, so I put a little chart here comparing the Inspiron 3847, which is my machine I've had for about 6 years now, and comparing it to the HP Fox 0024 machine that I just bought. Just going down the column on the Inspiron, it's an i5 4440, which at the time was a pretty top-end machine. It has built-in HD graphics right on its own board. I got 8 gigabytes of memory in it, running at 1600 megahertz. And it has 1 terabyte drive, and then I have 1 terabyte USB backup drive there. The performance test 9.0 benchmark rates it at 6678, which is considered below average now, but at the time it's pretty good level. Now, if you continue on the left side there, I took my 15-second 4K Gopro file, which was 182 megabytes, and I loaded it into my Inspiron machine. So the load time over the USB took 8 seconds. The load time to run it into Reelsteady Go program is 28 seconds. The rendering time using Reelsteady Go was 124 seconds. I then went over to my Shotcut video editing program, the Gopro file itself, to encode down to an HD level. It took 38 seconds. The same file encoded to UHD 4K was 107 seconds. You can see that the size of the file went up to, from the 14 of the HD, went up to 85 megabytes. So that's obviously it's part of why it took longer. And then I took the Reelsteady Go 4K file, which was 304 megabytes, and I encoded it at the HD level for output, which is the 1080p. That took 39 seconds. And then the Reelsteady Go file again, encoding it at 4K, took 106 seconds. And now we compare that to what we have over on the Fox 0024 machine with the Ryzen 5 3400G. It has built-in Vega 11 graphics on board, so there's not a separate graphics processing unit card in that box. It's got 12 gigabytes of DDR4 memory running at 2600 megahertz, and I can go up to 32 gigabytes, which it costs to update that's about $100. It has a built-in 250 gigabyte SSD right on the board. And like I said, I added a 2 terabyte hard drive inside. Its CPU rating is maybe about 30% higher, 40% higher than the prior machine. But you can tell the times here, the load times for each of the different file types are significantly reduced. And then in the Shotcut program that carries on further is significantly reduced time to do that kind of encoding that I was mentioning. So I'm pretty happy. I only paid $450 for the new machine, plus another $90 for the 2 terabyte drive. And so I think this will be plenty good for what my needs are, which is making YouTube videos, even at the 4K level, that I can upload and use on YouTube and other platforms. I hope this helped you. If you're thinking about doing the same thing, I saved a little bit of homework on if you followed along what I said here. And with that, I'll catch you later.